Okay. So today we are going to look at composition and situational writing. Never too much compo and situational writing, yeah, because this takes up a huge amount of marks for your total weightage. And then after that, if we have a bit more time, we'll have a look at current affairs. All right. Let's see how many of you have responded online. Yep, go ahead, Unluck. So David, Zixuan, Galvin, Kirana, and Wesley have responded online. Good. Let's start. At any point in time, right, if you have any questions, you must ask, okay? Because that's what we're here for. If you don't ask, right, I don't know that you don't know. So you must ask. All right. So I'm sure that whatever you ask, other people will have the same question as well, and then we can all learn together, right? The key here is to ask. Okay, first, situational writing, composition. So remember what I said to you guys, right? A descriptive composition can be any type of composition. Remember I said that before? It's just that the mark weightage would be different if they've specified it as a descriptive composition. The keywords to know whether something is descriptive, right, would of course be the word describe by itself. The moment you see something like describe, right, you know it's a descriptive composition. Okay, but it could be anything. So why do I say that? It could be let's say for example over here I can say something like describe a time when you were really disappointed. All right. Talk about what happens and how you overcame the disappointments. Now over here, right? For example, this is this could be like one of your questions, yeah? Question 1 or something, okay? So the moment you see this word, you know that the mark weightage will change because it's a descriptive, all right? So that would mean that more marks would be given for good vocabulary and more descriptive sentences. But if you look at this, right, more deeply, this question is not just a descriptive question. This question is about you, well, when you were really disappointed in the past. Okay, so this is actually a recount. Not just a recount, it's a personal recount. It's about you and a time when you experienced disappointment. So this is what we call a combination. So technically, right, this question is a descriptive plus a personal recount. Okay, so we call this a mixed question. Okay, so most of the time when we deal with descriptive questions, right, they are combined with another type of essay that you might know how to write. Okay, but are there pure descriptives as well? Yes, there are. Okay, it's very few and far between. But if you see a pure descriptive, and you know that your vocabulary isn't very good, right? Just avoid it at all costs. Okay, but here's the problem. Some students, right, the moment they see the word describe at the front of the question, their brain just turns off. They immediately think, oh, this question, right, is too tough. I don't like it because my vocabulary is not very good and I don't like to write very long sentences. I won't do this question, sure fail. Okay, but that's the wrong thinking. You have to ask yourself, right? Is descriptive plus what? Okay, so if it's plus something else that normally you can write, like a personal recount, or maybe a narrative, right? Like the ones you used to do in PSLE, then you should attempt that question if there's no better question over there. All right, because they're normally paired with some other type of essay. So let me give you an example of a pure descriptive. This is the one that you need to, or rather you should avoid, right? If you know that you don't do very well when you have to, write a lot and use a lot of fantastic vocabulary. So here's an example. They will say something like, describe your school describe your school's morning assembly on a school day, that kind of thing. All right. So is this narrative? Is it telling a story? No, it's not. Is this a recount where you kind of write as if you're writing your memory down for someone to read? It's not. Is this an argumentative where you have to take a side and argue one side? It's not. Right? It's not even an expository. It's just you giving me details about what your school is like during morning assembly. So this is a pure description, all right? Pure descriptive, all right? And this is the one that you should avoid if you are not confident in your vocabulary. But if you are, this is the one that you should write. So this one requires strong vocabulary bank. All right, moving on. So when you write a descriptive composition, all right, appeal to the 5 senses. Okay, the easiest ones to appeal to are sights, which people normally can write about, and of course you can appeal to sound, which is quite easy. Now the ones that are a bit harder to appeal to, right, and I can understand why, would be taste and touch. Okay, and then of course you can also appeal to smell, which is somewhere in between. It might not be that difficult actually. So appeal to the 5 senses. Okay, sight and sound, very easy to describe normally, right? Normally you can hear stuff and you can see stuff all the time, but people don't normally think about what they are smelling unless it's a very new smell or it's super smelly, right? Or it's super fragrant. Then they will talk about smell. If not, normally they don't. That's why this one is kind of like in between. Okay, but when you describe a scene with people in it, right? In a place, that kind of thing. You can't stick out your tongue and lick everyone, right? That would be that would be disgusting. So how would you describe taste? Yeah. How would you describe touch? You can't go around and touch everyone's skin, right? Some people might scream molest at you. So how do you describe taste and touch then? Okay. So the whole key over here to describe both of these types of senses, right, is to just imagine that you did it and you can taste it, or you touch it, you imagine the texture. All right. So for example, if I look at someone sweating, do I need to lick their sweat to taste how their sweat feels or how their sweat tastes? Obviously not, that's disgusting, right? But you have tasted your own sweat before, okay? And then maybe sometimes you smell a very strong soury smell. You can add all of those, right, in your taste, no problem. All right. For touch, okay, maybe you can talk about things like smooth, rough, bumpy, slightly sharp, edged. All right. You can talk about like warm, like you can make a comparison, like sheep's fur or like wool or like silk, that kind of thing, or like velvet. Okay, I'm not sure whether you all have seen velvet before. It's one of the smoothest and super nice to touch materials that you can ever touch. If your mom has anything that is velvet, all right, or your dad has anything that's velvet, you should seriously go and touch it. It's very warm though when you wear something velvet, all right? So velvet is this material, all right? Not sure whether you have seen it at home before, but it's super, super smooth, all right, when you touch it. And it's basically, right, silk, all right, woven very finely together, all right? So blue velvet fabric, all right, forest green velvet, it's this kind of material, all right? And you see it, people sell it all the time online. There's a lot of women's clothes that are velvet, right? It feels really good, all right? When you touch the material, okay? So that's velvet. Then you have silk. Silk is well known for being very light, okay? And if you have something that's silk, right, like a pillowcase over here, if you lie on it, your hair doesn't get caught in the fabric because it's just woven in such a way, right, that it's so finely woven together that your hair doesn't get stuck. If you lie on like any other material, your hair might get stuck. In the morning, you wake up, right, then you're like, oh, wow, so much hair on my pillow, that kind of thing. Well, then you have to pick them out, pluck them out one by one, right? But if it's silk, your hair doesn't get stuck there. All right, and silk is produced by this little fellow over here. All right, it's a silkworm. And then that's why it's so expensive, right? Because a single silkworm produces a limited amount of silk each year only. And then all this silk, right, is used to create all these silk materials. So it's one of the the materials that China used to trade with other countries that made China such a rich empire in the past. All right, a lot of other countries and other continents, people away in other continents, a lot of them, right, demanded and wanted silk because it just feels so good. Okay, so that's silk for you, smooth as silk, stuff like that. Or you make a comparison. So you can do that for taste and for touch. Because I find that most of the time when people are trying to describe things, right, they miss out the taste and the touch, but they always tell me about the sight and the sounds. So that's an idea for you, right? How to describe taste and touch. So how do I know if your descriptive essay is good, right? If I can imagine it, okay? If I can imagine it in a lot of detail. So that's what it means, vivid. Vivid means in detail. If I can imagine it in detail, you've written a good descriptive composition. So it's not just the physical description, okay? It's also reflecting on why something is special or important as well. All right, it's not just the physical description. All right, it can also be emotional. It can also be your thoughts. It can be psychological. Okay. And of course, it could be like your five senses as well, plus your five senses. So here are some examples of descriptive compo topics. Like for example, this one, describe your favorite part of your home and say why it is special to you. So since you have to explain why, this is expository. And the front part, right, is just pure descriptive because you have to just describe a part of your home. It's not describe your experience. It's not describe what you think or how you felt or whatever. It's describe a physical part of your home. But later on, you have to add the expository part later, right? Explaining. The moment you have to explain, see the word explain, right? The moment you think that you have to explain something, you know it's expository. Explain, expository. Okay, so this is a combination of descriptive and expository. And the second one, describe a national celebration in which you were involved. Now look at this. You were involved. You have to describe it. So since it's from your perspective, it's actually you recounting your own experience during the national celebration. Now, the moment we say national celebration,